The Pulse is about pre-existing conditions today. We humans have to live somewhere, and no matter where we build our dwellings, we'll encounter some issues to deal with, whether it's eucalyptus trees or rising sea levels. But there's one huge pre-existing condition that people often don't think about, the risk of earthquakes.
That's right, pre-existing by virtue of Mother Nature.
That's Ross Stein. He is a geophysicist, and he runs a company called Tembler. They help people prepare for earthquakes. And he says that even in very earthquake-prone areas, people often don't build with earthquakes in mind. If you think about it, most buildings are essentially stacks of cubes, one room on top of another, on top of the next.
A cube is extremely vulnerable to being shaken from side to side. And the taller you make that stack, the stronger the shaking gets amplified, and the harder it is to build a structure that resists destruction on shaking. So we are almost pathologically choosing a way to live which is maladapted to earthquakes.
Stein says there is a better, more stable way to build.
You could go to any boat in the bay, any sailboat in the bay, and that boat could handle any shaking that was hurled at it by the San Andreas Fault. Boats are built with curves and triangles. They use light materials, fiberglass and wood. They're heavier at the bottom and light on top.
Of course, you can't stack boats or dome shapes, which are also better in earthquakes. And space is usually a commodity, which is why we end up going for the cube model, especially in cities. And is there any way to retrofit the buildings that are already there? What would that take?
Retrofitting or seismically strengthening buildings is hugely important and can be done. In some kind of buildings, like wood buildings, it's relatively inexpensive, maybe costs 10% of the cost of the new building.
Retrofitting is also possible for modern concrete buildings.
If you walk around, for example, downtown San Francisco, you'll see lots and lots of diagonal steel I-beams, which have been put into place to strengthen the bottom floor of the buildings. So there's an enormous amount that can be done.
What do you think has to happen for people to pay more attention to the earthquake risk in absence of an actual earthquake? It's hard to think about things that haven't happened yet, and people probably just want a roof over their head.
That's very true. I just refinanced my house, and I asked the accredited California real estate appraiser, "Do you want to know if my home was seismically retrofit?" And he said no. I said, "What do you mean no?" He says, "It has no impact on the value of your home, but have you put any marble countertops in any bathrooms?" And I thought, this is absolutely absurd. Ideally, if you strengthen your home, its value should raise, and that should be reflected in the price, which justifies you going through this effort to protect your family and your investment. So we have to change that attitude and let people understand that they can make themselves safer.
But in many countries around the world, retrofitting structures or constructing buildings that aren't vulnerable to earthquakes isn't a big priority. Money is tight, resources are scarce, the population is booming, and people just need a place to live. Are there particular cities that just give you basically an anxiety attack looking at them?
Yes, there are many cities around the world utterly unprepared. And those tend to be places like Bangladesh, Ecuador. And the problem is that the people who are typically most vulnerable have the fewest financial means to address this concern. I mean, think of the Haiti earthquake in 2010, which killed probably 250,000 people, almost all because of poor construction. There was nothing different about the shaking in that magnitude 7 than the shaking in the magnitude 7 that killed 60 people in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Just think of that, 60 versus 250,000. And that's all because of construction quality in a poor country. So if we're really going to change this, we need to work in those countries where the costs in human life are so high and the cost to improve buildings would be so low.
Ross Stein is a geophysicist and the CEO of Tembler. That's a company and app that helps people prepare for earthquakes.